Alright, welcome to my guide on how to complete every single Zuk combat achievement. I'll have timestamps in the description, but we'll start with the elite tier achievements, go through the 5 mechanical master achievements, then we'll go over the main concepts to achieve the master speed times in normal mode and hard mode, and we'll close out the video with the full breakdown on the Grandmaster Speedkill. Enjoy the video, and good luck, have fun. So in the elite tier, we need to complete a normal mode run in under 20 minutes. We'll need to complete a flawless normal mode to unlock hard mode, and lastly, we'll need to get a hard mode kill without getting hit by the igneous rain attack. For the sub 20 normal mode kill, we don't really need to do anything especially fancy if we have good necromancy gear. I'll cover the in-depth strategies and lures later in the Grandmaster section, but without trying to be too overwhelming now, I'll share the main concepts that I use for each set of waves. For the first few melee waves, I try to aim to be in the center of the arena, and when monsters group up, I'll use Threads of Fate or Triple Scythe. For the ranger waves, I try and aim to be at the very south of the arena, near the gate, and when the rangers all clump up, I'll use Threads of Fate or Death Skull bounces to clear those guys. For the major waves, I'll try to be near the center of the westernmost wall, and most of the monsters will clump up in the middle, where I can again use Threads of Fate and Death Skull bounces to kill them quickly. Haraken can easily be killed during a tier 95 weapon spec, or while under the effects of Split Soul if necessary. Zuk can also be easily killed in the duration of a living death, and if you followed these general concepts, you should smash the 20-minute normal mode timer, and get a flawless kill along the way. The hard mode challenge for the elite tiers is to avoid getting hit by the igneous rain attack, and it's actually a little bit ambiguous if it's referring to the lava wall attack that Zuk does every 40 to 45 seconds during the waves, or if it's referencing the rain during the pizza phase. Either way, I'll show you how to dodge both of those. To dodge the lava wall, you'll hear Zuk exclaim a voice line, either the skies burn, flames consume you, or fall and burn to ash. After hearing one of those lines, a line of lava will spawn from one of the edges of the arena, closing in on your player's location. If you just move away a few tiles, you can dodge that. It won't chase you or anything weird. Simply move a few tiles away whenever you hear the voice line, and you'll be good to go. If it is referencing the pizza phase rain, you can always use this strategy to avoid stepping in that. You'll always get stunned upon starting the phase, so either use freedom or use anticipation beforehand. Then the next safe section with the igneous minion will always be forward and to the left. If you surge towards Zuk and then dive diagonally a bit to the left, you'll always be safe. The same logic applies after killing an igneous monster. Face Zuk again, surge towards him, and then dive a bit diagonally to the left. That should complete all of the elite tier feats. In the master tier, we have 5 mechanical challenges. Firstly is the flawless kill, so to do that we'll have to successfully complete all of the 3 challenge waves during the fight. Easiest way to do that is to Threads of Fate for the first one, then use both necromancy weapon specs on the second challenge, and then simply barricade for the third challenge. We'll need to do a 1 cycle Haraken. We should be doing this normally. We'll need to do a kill where we do not move at all after the third challenge is finished, and we'll have to kill all 3 Jads from that same starting tile. So to do that, we will need to take a ranged weapon. We need that 9 tile range. Using necromancy will walk you away from the starting tile and forfeit the challenge. We'll need to do RBO on the igneous minions during the pizza phase, and lastly, we'll need to kill the Conduit of Ful in the final phase without moving. So let's look at all of these challenges now. So for the first 2 feats, you will want to get a flawless Zuk kill and a 1 cycle Haraken. To get the flawless, it's exactly the same concept as in the normal mode. Use Threads of Fate on the first challenge, both necro weapon specs on challenge 2, and barricade for challenge 3. To get the 1 cycle Haraken, you can achieve this by using Split Soul and a tier 95 weapon spec, then just improvising a rotation with that. But if you really must, just for the sake of getting this feat done, you could use a full living death and blast away with necrosis. For the challenge to kill all 3 Jads without moving, we will need a ranged weapon switch. So in my kill here, I brought my Bolg with me and a couple pieces of ranged armor. It doesn't necessarily need to be a Bolg, just a ranged weapon that has 9 tile range. Using magic or necromancy will walk you off of that starting tile. You'll automatically get placed on the correct tile after the third challenge, so just make sure you don't move at all. Equip your ranged gear and pick any Jad to kill quickly. You will have to be cautious of an igneous rain spawn, so you may want to camp high adrenaline and save barricade as a way to keep killing Jads and tank through the igneous rain if necessary. I actually did one run previously to this where I was killed by the igneous rain, so I played extra cautiously here and camped 100% adrenaline, ready to cade if needed. When it comes to prey flicking the Jads, they will actually attack you in the sequence, and should never be attacking you on the same tick, so it should be fairly easy to prey against these. If you do miss a flick, usually it's fine if you're full HP. Darkness could also help you dodge an attack, Resonance can heal you back to full, and Reflect will reduce the damage by half, so there's a lot of counterplay to achieve this feat. For the challenge to kill minions in reverse order, I've been referring to that as RBO since combat achievements came out, just because I've always been a Metroid fan, and reverse boss order is a famous speedrun category. Neither here nor there, but to get this feat done, when the pizza phase starts, you won't want to kill the meleeer or the ranger. Instead, you can just pre-death mark them, and you could vulnerability them or smoke cloud them if you really wanted to. But just wait until the major spawns, and once the major spawns, we'll want to work quickly here. Use bloat and maybe even a volley of souls to kill the major. Use a big weapon spec or a finger of death to kill the ranger quickly. Then use soul strike or a tier 90 weapon spec to stun the meleeer, and then any other strong necromancy abilities to kill the meleeer. This challenge is a lot easier than it seems. It may seem scary because you're on a bit of a timer before the insta kill, but necromancy is so powerful you should clear this no problem. For the Conduit challenge, I used the Aegis Aura, a Hellhound, and even brought a Ring of Death with me as a last resort backup, but I got this challenge done without signing, so you'll see this strat is pretty effective. I've seen a lot of players bring a dummy to get back to full adrenaline and do a natural instinct on it before attacking the Conduit. Personally, I just intentionally did a 2-cycle on Zuk and built full stacks. Then I did my natural instinct on Zuk when he was around 130k HP or so. The intention behind the natural instinct is so that I can use Living Death, get off of Death Skulls on the Conduit, and then build back to full adrenaline so that I can use Barricade. Once I'm barricaded, I can use Split Soul and try and juice out some more damage. When you kill one cycle of the pillar, you'll actually have a little bit of stall time before Zuk starts sending out auto attacks. So there is actually a way to do this without using Barricade altogether, but it's better to just play it safe. No need to be too fancy here. Once my barricade ran out though, I did have to tank a couple of auto attacks using Reflect, but that's perfectly fine. I'm quite close to finishing the kill now at this point anyway. Just make sure that you summon new conjures if you have to and use your best abilities. Deathmark is great on every cycle. Bloat is great on every cycle. Definitely take advantage of Split Soul while you're barricaded and use your weapon specs. And if all still goes wrong here, you still have a lot of backups here to tank some auto attacks. You've got your defensive abilities, your Hellhound, your Aegis Aura, your Sign of Life, and your Ring of Death. Lastly, in the Master tier are the speed timers. Normal mode in under 12:30 and hard mode in under 16 minutes. I would recommend skipping ahead and learning from the Grandmaster lures or watching my separate normal mode and hard mode Grandmaster guides if you want the specifics, but the main principles from normal mode are still very relevant and will work fine without the need to do anything especially fancy. So just to reiterate those, for the melee waves, I try and aim to be in the center of the arena, and when monsters group up, I'll use Threads of Fate or Triple Scythe. For the ranger waves, I try and aim to be at the very south of the arena near the gate, and when the rangers clump up, I'll use Threads of Fate or Death Skull bounces to clear those guys. For the major waves, I try to be near the center of the west wall, and most of the monsters will clump up in the middle, where I can again use Threads of Fate and Death Skulls to kill them quickly. Hurricane can easily be killed during a tier 95 weapon spec, especially if you're using Split Soul. You will want to save your Living Death for Zuk, and if you follow these general concepts, you should smash the normal mode 12:30 and the hard mode 16-minute requirements. Let's look at the Grandmaster feat now, which is to get a sub 13:30 hard mode kill. I'm wearing my best necromancy gear, and my perks are shown on screen. I will primarily be using a TzKal Zuk ring and a scripture of Ful during the waves leading up to Zuk. My inventory is fairly standard, but I am prioritizing food that does not penalize me with adrenaline loss or stat drain. This being Super Guthix Brews and Blue Blubber Jellyfish. But I am still bringing one solid panic food in the form of a Juju Gumbo for peace of mind. If you watched my previous video detailing this food, you'll know that I can also use it strategically to drastically increase my odds at a pocket slot activation. I have a Super Restore, which will counteract Zuk's hit point draining mechanic, and act as extra prayer restore should my penance powder not provide enough. I bring a Vitality Potion, which can be used to double my life points and tank one of Zuk's big typeless blast attacks during the final pillar phase. Lastly, I bring Cinderbane gloves, a Reaver's ring, and a Zorgoth's ring to use at various points in the fight. Neither Cinderbane's nor the TzKal Zuk effects work on Zuk, so I choose to use my Necromancy gloves and one of the two rings on him depending on what I'm looking for. If I'm lacking some souls and think that it's strategic not to use Soul Sap, I'll wear the Zorgoth's ring. I also try my best to wear Zorgoth's ring and my Raziel gloves anytime that I'm conjuring or reconjuring my undead army, as their damage and duration are determined on their first summon rather than what you're wearing at the time that they're alive. Let's get into the strategies for the waves now. At the end of this video, I'll also have a little cheat sheet for you to be able to glance at and quickly remember these ideas. Before starting the encounter, make sure to activate Quarm and Lantidime incense sticks, as well as powders of penance and protection. Standing in front of Zuk, use darkness and invoke death. Quickly enter the instance and summon your conjures plus life transfer. Wave 1. Do 2 abilities before moving into a Living Death and A-Pot rotation. I like to do Touch of Death and a Soul Sap or an auto attack before doing a Living Death and building Adrenaline. Target the northmost blob and use Death Skulls. Then use Threads of Fate and target the bats. Use Finger of Death. This should clear the wave, but some auto attacks while still under the effects of threads can be used to clear any stragglers. Wave 2. Before Wave 2 starts, during the transition delay is a perfect time to use Invoke Death. Be sure to use this before any wave if you have extra time. Position yourself in the northeast to target cycle and quickly deal with the ranger with Finger of Death. Invoke Death again, surge over to the other ranger, and kill him while building necrosis stacks. Now you want to focus on killing a few blobs and use Death Skulls before your Living Death runs out. Afterwards, try and build some more adrenaline on these blobs, aiming to be 60% or higher. Walk south and scythe the Meleer, then invoke Death and walk under him to get a better angle on the bats and any straggling blobs. Here you can use a second and a third scythe if necessary. Life transfer and invoke Death during the wave transition. I also like to place my first Prism of Restoration here to keep my Blood Reaver active. Wave 3. Start by killing the southeastern Meleer and then the bat. Lure everything up through the middle near this eastern rock, doing your best not to get the other southern Meleer stuck, as you will lose line of sight for your upcoming Threads of Fate. Optionally, you can build Adrenaline on the ranger while waiting for the lure to finish. Invoke Death, Threads of Fate, and Volley of Souls to kill all 4 of these Meleers. Then surge over and Tier 90 Weapon Spec to kill the last 2 monsters on the east. During the phase transition, target Zuk and use Soul Sap once. This is key for the next wave. Wave 4. This strategy will apply to all 3 of the Igneous waves and all 3 of the Zuk damage checks, so listen closely. In an ideal world, you'll have Invoke Death for all 3 monsters, and you'll be able to kill all 3 of them in 3 global cooldowns. Now, this isn't always the case. Sometimes it takes a 4th ability to guarantee that they'll die. But ideally, you'll Soul Strike the Meleer to stun him, then use Bloat and either a Touch of Death or Command Skeleton. Invoke Death and Bloat the Ranger, followed by an Auto and a Finger of Death or a Command Skeleton. Invoke Death and Bloat the Major, followed by basic abilities to build Adrenaline. Split Soul once you're happy with your Adrenaline, and if you're brave, you can take advantage of Split Soul on the Major. You're mostly using it preemptively for Zuk, but it can also help you speed up killing this Major. While surging and hitting the action button to lower Zuk's guard, command your skeleton. On Zuk, some improvisation will be required, but the aim is for you to use Death Skulls, Bloat, Volley of Souls, and a Finger of Death, if your necrosis stacks and adrenaline allow for it. After phasing, always be sure to use a Storm Shard, which will come into play at the end of the fight. Wave 5. First challenge. Invoke Death, Threads of Fate, Soul Sap. Turn around and use Volley on these back 2. Then finish the last 2 with a Touch of Death. The monsters behind that you used Volley on were not affected by Invoke Death, so guaranteeing that you kill them with a big hitting volley is crucial, as the last 2 can be killed with a lower hitting ability, thanks to the Death Mark. Wave 6. Summon new conjures. You have 2 abilities before the first Jad spawns, and unless I'm hurting for adrenaline, I usually like to make that second ability and Invoke Death. So do one ability on this Western Ranger, then Bladed Dive into this geyser spot near the Jad. When possible, Living Death and Apot, and make use of Skulls and Necrosis to quickly clear the Jad and the nearby bats. Once they are dead, you can start lowering the HP of the meleeers while moving near the newly formed cluster of Rangers. Be sure to vuln them, and keep using Skulls and Necrosis abilities as your cooldowns allow. Use your judgment on if using a double scythe will be beneficial in finishing off this wave quickly. Sometimes Necrosis is all you need, but having the scythe is another great tool to use. Wave 7. Quickly kill the bats on the sides of the arena before prioritizing the meleeer and getting in position for the lure. The lure for Wave 7 and 8 both will involve you standing on this geyser by the gate. If the geyser is active, standing on any of the adjacent tiles should work just as well. From here, I like to Vulnerability and Command Skeleton on the bigger Southwest Ranger while waiting for the clump to form. Then, I'll Invoke Death, Threads of Fate, Soul Sap, Volley of Souls the clump, and turn around to Tier 90 spec the two Rangers. This is another time that I usually will remember to place a Prism of Restoration. Wave 8. With a similar approach to Wave 7, Deathmark and Bloat the two majors on the sides of the arenas before prioritizing the meleeer. You'll have a little bit of extra time here waiting for Threads of Fate cooldown, so it's a good opportunity to summon some new conjures. Lower or kill the two Southwestern Rangers and possibly use Devotion if you're playing a little bit more defensively. When Threads is back from cooldown, use Threads of Fate, Volley of Souls, Finger of Death, and Weapon Spec. It can be tricky to get the best line of sight on all these monsters in this wave, but in my experience, there's rarely ever more than 2 stragglers who will be at low HP, which can quickly be finished with basics. Wave 9. Same approach as the previous Igneous wave and Zuk damage check. Although, arguably, you may want to consider omitting the volley this time and building to 5 soul stacks instead. I'll tend to make this decision based on my Necrosis stacks and whether or not my Death Skulls crit on Zuk. Wave 10. Second challenge. Invoke Death and 5-stack Volley will kill this guy outright maybe 70% of the time. It can be helpful to use Ingenuity of Humans to bump your damage potential from 80% to 100%, but I often forget this. Alternatively, you can use Finger of Death and both weapon specials as you see fit. Wave 11 is double Jads. You can do one ability on the major that spawns right next to you before killing the bats as fast as you can, while also building to 100%. Come stand in the nook of this L rock with the geyser and use Living Death on the Jad. I like to bounce Skulls firstly on the nearby majors, as they can often get stuck behind these rocks, giving you unoptimal line of sight in the later portion of this wave. When the first Jad is dealt with, Bladed Dive out to the center in such a way that the meleeer will come to join the fun, and continue clearing the wave with Death Skulls and Necrosis abilities. Wave 12. This can be a good time to summon new conjures or make sure that you extend your existing ones. Stand in the southwest, just in line with the tip of this rock to lure everything from the east side without getting stuck. Kill the nearby major, then Invoke Death and kill the ranger with Bloat. Bloat the southern bat, as he will get stuck and be hard to deal with later. Come back just a little bit north and lower this westernmost large dog and the little major, waiting for the northeasternmost little major to come join the clump in the middle. When he does, Invoke Death, Threads of Fate, Soul Sap, Volley of Souls, and Weapon Spec or Finger any stragglers. Wave 13. I like to start north and kill this ranger quickly with a Bloat before moving to the same spot as before and killing the mage dog who is there. To stand in the spot that I like, you often have to right click where his left paw is. Kill this mage dog, then kill the Southern Ranger. Before doing a similar strategy to the previous wave and lowering the HP of the dog and his two little mage pals who are slightly north. Since we're waiting for our Threads of Fate cooldown, similar to what we did in Wave 8, this can be a good time to summon new Condors, or use Devotion if you're playing safely. When ready, invoke Death, Threads of Fate, Volley of Souls, and finger any stragglers. Note, it can be beneficial to surge out to the middle to give yourself a better line of sight. Wave 14. Same approach as the previous Igneous waves and Zuk damage check. Before phasing Zuk, it's a good time to summon new Condors and extend them. Going into Wave 15, you can optionally also Living Death and Apod, but make sure that you do this early enough that it'll come back off cooldown for Zuk. Wave 15. Disruption Shield the first big hit, Devotion, and pray accordingly for the next two hits. Resonance the third. All while building Adrenaline, Necrosis stacks, and Soul stacks. Wave 16. Triple Jads. Invoke Death and Death Skulls the first Jad, then immediately turn around and invoke Death, Vulnerability, and finger the second Jad. Command your skeleton and finish off these two Jads before moving into the third. Invoke Death, Vulnerability, and improvise using Bloat, your last 4 Necrosis stacks, and possibly a tier 90 weapon special. Build as much soul as possible, and when the wave is finished, you can throw a Storm Shard onto Zuk and grab an extra soul off of him if necessary. Now is the best time to split soul and invoke Death, as you want it to come back off cooldown early enough in the Zuk fight, but you also want to use it now to speed up Haraken. Improvise using your Death Skulls, Bloat, 5-stack Volley, tier 95 weapon special attack, and your Necrosis plus supercharged autos. Tier 90 weapon special when it's back off cooldown, Command Skeleton, and Command Zombie can also be used near the end of your Condor's lifespan when Haraken is low HP. When Haraken is starting to get to low HP, it's a good time to start building souls, and optionally, you can wear Zorgoth's Ring in the hopes to help you build them quicker. Typically, I find that Haraken can be killed in about 35 to 40 seconds doing this strategy. During Haraken's death animation, summon new Condors, build any extra stacks and adrenaline you need on Zuk, use Smoke Cloud and a Storm Shard. And if you're confident in the timing, you can bloat and still have time to build back up and command Skeleton right before the actual fight starts. Wave 18, Zuk. Essentially, you just want to do your best Living Death rotation and activate Split Soul after the first Finger of Death. Your Living Death should end around the time that he says die, and he throws his typeless attack at you that you're going to block with Disruption Shield. At this point, you have time for 5 more abilities before Pizza Face. Try to get off both your weapon special attacks and any other necrosis or high damaging abilities that you can. My ideal HP before going into Pizza Phase is anything under 500,000. This is going to make 2 cycling a breeze. In some very bad edge case scenarios, I've only gotten him to like 550k HP, but still managed to 2 cycle consistently. Now if you're watching this Grandmaster guide, I'm sure that you know how to handle the Pizza Phase. But the tips that I'll share with you here are to summon new Condors after the second Igneous creature, build back up to 5 Soul stacks and 12 Necrosis stacks, throw on 2 more Storm Shards, and reapply Smoke Cloud. I like to Natural Instinct on the 3rd Igneous creature, usually 3 or 4 abilities after he spawns. To take full advantage of this natty, I like to bloat and Death Skull Zuk while he's still immune, and then build back up to around 85% adrenaline before hitting the action button. My next ability will be a Divert, which will put me at 100%, then I Living Death before he can first hit me, His first hit is going to give me a lot of adrenaline so I can go right into a Death Skulls. Then from here, the approach is very similar to the first cycle, where you're just trying to do your very best living death rotation, and at some point you work into Shatter. Shatter is going to be a guaranteed 30k hit, which is going to be great for phasing him quicker. Conduit phase. Now for the Conduit phase, extend your Condors and super restore if you need. Deathmark all 5 times, and be aware of any unintentional, bugged, double Deathmark procs. You'll notice the boss's HP bar drops by 40,000 instead of 20,000 anytime that this happens. And instead of doing one big typeless attack, he'll do 2 big typeless blast attacks at once. To deal with this, simply double up on whatever your defensive option was. For example, if you're going to reflect one of the typeless blasts, now you're going to have to reflect and Vitality Potion. Or maybe you Resonance and Disruption Shield. This is a bit of an annoying bug that can definitely be fatal sometimes. And while it does speed up your time by about 10 seconds for every time that it happens, it's not really in the spirit of being a Grandmaster to celebrate when this happens. It's important to know how to deal with it, but let's also aim to learn consistent strategies for when this eventually gets patched out. As mentioned before, Deathmark and Bloat every Conduit. I think that 5 abilities each time is the maximum amount of time that you'd want to spend killing each Conduit. So use your judgment in using the best ones available. An example rotation for the 5 Conduits might look something like this cheat sheet. That's the Grandmaster's guide on how to consistently and comfortably get sub 14 minute hard mode Inferno clears. And there you have it. That's my video on how to complete every single Zuk Combat Mastery achievement. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe, as I'll be making videos like this covering every single achievement in the game. Share this video with a friend, leave me a comment. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.